Unto the house of Israel, to the church of God and the saints of Christ, to them that are sanctified in Christ Jesus, called to be saints. I thank the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob for waking me up at the appointed hour with a reasonable portion of health and strength, and above all else, a mind to want to go all the way with the Lord to see what the end would be. Thank God for all of us who God has spared us collectively to see the change to our Class A uniform, the brown and the blue. Growing up in the church, there was an exciting time like now. It was a changing from the blue to the brown. It was a beginning of a new season. We can call that Rosh Hashanah. It's not a new year, but it's a new season. And the ceremonial songs that accompanied this changing of the uniform. We used to sing 8 months in the year. We wear our blue and brown. 8 months in the year, we wear our gloves and crown. Beginning in the month of Ethanim, this was prophetic by the founder, Bishop William S. Prouty. We put on our blue and brown, and we have 3 brilliant colors in our crown. 36 Sabbaths in the year, we wear our brown, according to the commandment of God. Now let me pause here to say that Prophet Crowdy gave us a brown and blue because while he was sleeping one night, God revealed to him that he wanted his army to wear brown and blue. So Prophet at the Plainfield Passover said, if God said brown and blue, I say brown and blue. To the executive chair, Bishop C.L. Hendricks and the First Lady, to the chief evangelist, the evangelist at large, Israel Natuli, to the elders of Israel, both male and female, the grandmother Sarah and her quorum, the chief chorister and the choir officials, to the deacons, the daughters of Jerusalem, sisters of mercy, and sons of God's prophet. It is good for us to be here. When I spoke of ceremonial songs, it usually described what we are to remember. Remember, each time Israel had a feast, it was based on some traumatic experience that they had gone through. The U.S. military has their songs that they sing, their ceremonial songs. The Navy, they sing anchors aweigh, my boy. The Marines, they sing from the halls of Mountain Zuma to the shores of Tripoli. We will fight our country's battle in the air, on the land, and the sea. The Air Force, they had their ceremonial songs. Way high up yonder, over the wild view yonder. So veterans on Veterans Day, some have returned from the war, others did not. But each time they hear that song, played by a band or sung by a choir, it stirs something inside of them and lifts them up. When we sing putting on our blue and brown, it should stir something inside of us.
Yes,
That will lift us up.
Come on.
Today we here to remember God's goodness in our lives. And I submit to you this morning that faith gives us courage to face the present with confidence and the future with expectation. Remember, when trials come in our lives, never be afraid to trust an unknown situation to an all-knowing God.
Yes.
This morning, in keeping with the new season of change, I want to call your attention to the 5th chapter of Matthew, verse 44, 45, and 48. Matthew 5, verse 44, 45, and 48. These are the words of Jesus because they're in red lettering. But I say unto you, love your enemies. Bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you. And pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. Now it doesn't stop there because there's semicolon here. Verse 45, that ye may be the children of your Father, which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to shine on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and the unjust. Verse 48, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. Again, in keeping with the new season, I want to speak from the 44th verse. I want to start this small message by saying we need to bury old grudges. Burying old grudges. We know we are familiar with the Hatfields and the McCoys. These were two families that were always feuding against one another.
Preach, Bishop.
And it was handed down from generation to generation. And all they saw between the two families were violence. And they could never seem to come together in peace and in harmony. My brothers and sisters, trusting in God requires faith and goodwill toward all men. We need to understand that faith will allow us to understand when we're being treated unjustly and unfairly, when we are being affected by injustice at every point in our life. But I want to tell you this morning, the worst thing that we can happen to us is to develop victimitis. Victimitis is you carrying around your grudges and nursing the hurts, instead of like Jesus when he said, cast all of your faults into the sea of forgetfulness. But somehow, every once in a while, we want to dig them up. But I want to add, when you cast your faults into the sea of forgetfulness, don't go fishing. Let them remain where they are. This only produces a whole new batch of emotional demons that are released in our lives to torment our souls. Let me give you a few. Resentment, anger, aggression, self-pity, and even when vengeance becomes a mixed up recipe for messed up feelings, That's what happens when we release those demons within us. It's a mixed up recipe for a messed up feelings. But if we walk in the light,
Bishop.
as Jesus said we walk in the light, you will recognize that upon occasions you'll be tested and you'll be treated unfairly. But always remember, you have got to believe that God can handle the injustice better than you can. You have what it takes, and it just takes a little bit of faith. Faith that God will settle the score in a way that will be helpful and not harmful to everyone involved. God has a way of stepping in and correcting a situation that can be both beneficial to the adversary and to the victim. Come on, somebody. He has a way of causing resolution, reconciliation, and conflict between the unjust. So do not carry around these grudges and bury them in the sea of forgetfulness. I submit to you again this morning, God knows the ins and the outs, the upsetting situations in your life a lot better than you do. And I want to add that God knows how to pull weeds without destroying the flowers. He knows how to destroy, he knows how to pull the weeds, again, without destroying the flowers.
Preach, Bishop.
He understands your adversary. He understands your opponents and your enemies a lot better than you can. So I say to you that God has a way that is mighty sweet. And I lay my burdens down at his feet, for he knows the road and he knows the load I'm carrying. So I put all my trust in him. This afternoon, let us make an affirmation that we will drop out and bury all of our resentments, all of our anger, all of our vengeance, all the injustices in our life.
Yes, I hear you,
Into
Bishop.
the deepest sea of God's mercy and his power and his love. As we trust him tonight, he will settle the matter in the best way that he can. If we have differences in our lives, and God said, I know you'll have enemies, that's why he told the psalmist David to say, I prepared a table before them in the presence of our enemies. Thank God this afternoon. And we ask God to take over our emotional demons, and some of us have them. This is a new season to unload these demons. It's a new season of refreshment, that we may be able to start a new slate. It's not our new year, but it's a seasonal change. And we ask God that his spirit will rest with us and abide with us. And when afflictions come in our life, let us remember to let God arise and let his enemies be scattered. Let them that hate us flee before us. Let the wicked perish at the presence of the Lord and the God of Israel. When resentment, when anger comes into our lives, let us remember to let God arise, because he's there. All he wants us to do is trust him and have faith to know that he's able. He's able to deliver us from whatever we're in, whatever situation we find ourselves in. He's able, and he cares for us. Let us never forget that we are serving a God that cares for us. He knows us by name. He told David, I know them. I know every number of hair that's on the head. When we lose a hair on our head, God knows, because he holds us up high and above the sparrow, and if the sparrow falls, how much more do you think God can hold us up? When a sparrow falls, and God knows when every sparrow falls, how much more worthy are we than the sparrow? So I said, let us trust in God. Let us know that he's able, and he will.
Yes, sir.
He will.
Yes,
He
sir.
will save us.
He will.
Come on.
Whatever what we're in,
Yes, he
whatever we
will.
find ourselves in, he's able to do that. John 14:6, Jesus said, I am the way, I am the truth,
Yeah.
and I am the life. No man cometh unto the Father except he come by me. And I'm saying to you, my sisters and brothers, this afternoon, that let us take on some of that I amness that Jesus had. There was none like him in his birth. There was none like him in his life. There was none like him in his resurrection. And if we take on his I amness, we're taking on, there's nobody that has our DNA. We're not a carbon copy of anybody. We are what God created us to be. Nobody can steal our blessings if it's for us. I'm saying to you, be encouraged and take on some of that I amness. Be the first to be able to claim the same things that Jesus claimed. That I am the way, and let us show people by our example of life.
Yes.
Let's show them that we're living the life of Christ, and that if we keep our feet in the path of righteousness, that God will give us a seat in his eternal kingdom. As I so often say, where the wicked shall cease from troubling, and the weary shall be made at rest. I'm so grateful that the Lord has spared my life to be able to put on this brown and blue. I count it a privilege. I don't take it for granted, because there's so many people that have left this earth, and I'm still standing here. I'm on the top side of the earth, and I thank God for that. I'm so grateful. I'm thankful. I am blessed. I saw another year that the Lord has spared me, an extension of another year of life. And I intend to give it all to him. All to Jesus I surrender. All to him I freely give. We are here because of God's grace. If it was not for God's grace, many of us would not be here today. But because of his mercy, because of his mercy and his justice, has allowed us to continue to enjoy the level of life that we're living. I thank God for all of you. I look at the chief courser and the great work that she's doing. I look at all of these different committees. Sometimes you're undescribable. You're doing some fantastic work. I want to thank publicly those of you that have responded to the bishop's request last week to honor the bishop. I received phone calls. I received gifts. My hat goes off to the Sefer Tabernacle that I pastored for 42 years. They just outdid themselves. It brings tears to my eyes, because they blessed me so much on last week that I can't even describe the feeling that I had. Sometimes you got to get away from a situation to know how appreciated you were. I thank God for the saints of Seaford, the love that they extended to me. Elder Brown is doing a tremendous work in Seaford. Last week, I was able to baptize. So I thank God to see that the work is still moving in Seaford, Delaware. And my constant prayer as the Lord will continue to raise them up. I love every sheep of the fold. I used to sing that song, and I sang it because I knew I look at people, and with, people have faults. I have faults. You have faults. But the love is that you can overlook those faults in order to get along, in order to love God. And I don't want anybody to rob me of my seat in the kingdom. And if it means that I have to love you in spite of, that's what I'm going to do.
You talking
Because
right, Bishop.
I want to be saved.
Yes.
I don't want anybody to rob me of that opportunity. But I'm
Hallelujah.
saying to the house of Israel, we have been blessed for 2 years. We have received the joy and the spirit of God. But let me say this to you. We need to be warned that when God is blessing, the devil starts messing.
Amen.
Let us not become an instrument of division. Let us not backbite and say terrible things about each other. We have the element of love here. And the element of love will cause us to grow and grow and grow, because God is love.
Yes, sir.
And when
Yes,
he
sir.
sees you loving one another, he has nothing but praise. He's going to lift you up as high as he can. And I'm saying, if we continue this love, the sky is the limit for all of us. I thank God for this administration. I'm happy to be a part of this movement, this Joshua movement. And I pray for our leader every night. I may not talk to him on the phone all the time, but he's constantly in my prayer because he's got a big job and he needs God's direction. And God is blessing him. And I ask that we continue to pray that God will continue to bless him, that he will lead us in the path of righteousness. I'm so grateful this morning, and I just wanted to share those few words with you. But we're in this season that has every opportunity for us. And I'm saying, let us march toward that opportunity. And I believe, as God had promised Abraham and his descendants, you'll be in bondage for 400 years, like we're in this pandemic. But guess what? He said, at the end of those years, I will cause you to go out with an abundance of blessings. And I believe on the other side of this pandemic, there's a blessing for all of us. I believe that we're just tipping the iceberg. God, if you're faithful in this pandemic, your outcome on the other side is going to be so much greater. It's going to be of abundance to you. I'm grateful for the website, the Zoom that we're on, that's keeping us in touch with one another. But can you imagine when we go face to face again in our local tabernacles, how much more of a blessing it will be? I pray to God that he bless you and keep you is my prayer.